I'm in the business of fixing things. Air conditioning equipment, that's my jam. But I am not a fan of having to repair something when I know that the breakdown could have been avoided entirely. These components right here are surge protectors that actually hook up to your equipment to avoid costly repairs. Now, surges and overcurrent situations are very well known for taking out TVs, refrigerators, microwaves, appliances like that. And most of the time they have a surge protector that you plug into, like your laptop, your stand-up computer. Most of your TVs now, you will use a surge protector, just one, because it has plenty of outlets for your entertainment center, and two, because it helps out your equipment for overcurrent surge protectors, a lightning storm. But what are you using to protect your air conditioning equipment, your indoor unit and your outdoor unit? A TV, my 75-inch TV I think was only $750. My air conditioning equipment was thousands of dollars. Which one do you think would make me cry more if, God forbid, a lightning strike hit my house and took out my TV or my AC? I'm gonna miss the TV. I'm gonna be paying for that air conditioning equipment. Now, these are surge protectors. They actually go on your equipment around the disconnects or your high voltage intake for the system itself. It goes before your motors and your compressors and your very expensive control boards. Now, these are the two that I use the most for different applications. This is the Intermatic AG3000 and this is the Rectorseal RH50. The Intermatic AG3000 has a long history of being a very well-documented high-end surge protector, and it doesn't cost a ton of money. This one is the one that I use primarily for the outdoor units. This is the one that is 100% waterproof. It mounts directly to your disconnect, hooks in to your fuses, and it makes sure that the outdoor unit is good to go. And it has a very bright green light on the side of it that tells you if it's working or if it's damaged. Now, this doesn't go on commercial equipment. This one right here is only meant for 122/40 applications, not three-phase. This is the Rectorseal RH50. This is the one that I use for your indoor equipment, whether you have a gas furnace, an air handler for a heat pump or straight cool, or even a geothermal unit. This is the one that I use inside because it is smaller than the Intermatic and I can mount it in different places inside the equipment with a very low profile. Now, this is also 122/40, so it will work with whatever equipment you have inside. And just like the Intermatic, it does have a green light built into it so that you know if the unit is damaged or not. So this air handler right here has a control board and an ECM blower motor. Both components are very expensive to fix if they go out. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which of these breakers has the control board hooked up to it and hook up the interior surge protector to it so that both of these components are protected. Now, in this case, I know that my 60 is the breaker for my control board because this 35 is just 5 kW of heat on the heat kit itself. So the first thing you're going to want to do always is turn off the power. And with this particular application, I'm going to try and mount the surge protector right here and then wire it into the load side of the breaker. Now, personally, I like making everything clean and serviceable. It's a little difficult to mount the surge protector on the side there to try and screw a hole sideways, so I'm going to take this plate out and actually mount it to what looks like the underside of the control board, but it's going to be mounted to the metal, and it comes with this bracket that allows me to hold it down or sit it down so it sits lower, but it will still do its job and actually look good. Now I want this one to sit back as far as possible, so we're going to run the bracket away from the front, just like this. Good to go. Now that that bracket is installed, we can reattach the control board bracket to the housing. Now take a look at your wires just to make sure you didn't mess up while you were twisting the control board around, because when you turn it on, you don't want to have an issue just because you're trying to make everything better. Now, putting the device into the bracket is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It is your basic lock nut, threaded screw type deal. And I don't have to use the rubber on this one because we are not outside. Yeah, definitely strip these back because they don't ever give you enough wire to actually work with. This process is pretty easy. Just gonna go one by one. Get yourself at a good angle to where you can see. There you go. Under that lug. Make it all very, very tight. There you go, a little tug test. That is the high voltage taken care of. Make sure that you tuck the wires out of the way of the door or any sharp edges and move on to the ground. This is when it pays off to hoard tools, because a normal screwdriver is not fitting in there. Stubby for the win. Go ahead and undo your ground. This one's gonna need a little bit of surgery. Now we're just gonna take our green, which is our ground, make this one nice and long, because technically it doesn't have to be inside of a jacket, and thread that through with our grounds and tighten it all back up. A little bit of a tug test, we're good to go. All right, moment of truth. Green light. Now this is the control board, blower motor, and the expensive thermostat downstairs that is now protected. Now attaching a surge protector to a furnace can be a little tricky. Your connections are in here, but this plate most of the time normally comes off. This York furnace in particular has a plate right here, so I can mount to this and wire to the control or the high voltage coming in. If not, then most of the time you're just gonna have to drill a 1/2-inch hole right up here and then wire it in from the bottom and have the surge protector sticking out the top. So to mount to the plate on the inside, I'm just going to use the bracket provided, and I just need to use some self-tappers for holes. Now with the bracket installed, all I have to do is hook it up the same way I did inside of the air handler, wire it up to my high voltage, and that's it for this one. Now when you want to mount the surge protector up here, you just pick your place, make sure nothing is on the bottom, and then just use a step bit to get your 1/2-inch. If you need to eyeball it, then go ahead and stick it in here. Once it sits all the way down, you're ready to put the lock nut on. The lock nut's easy, just thread the wires through just like the air handler. This is pretty simple, it's 120 volts, 3 wires. We should have our neutral, hot, and ground. Now this system actually uses a knockout to get into the electrical, but we're not going to use that. If you pay attention, the wires that come from the control board actually have a flared edge that they go through so they don't ground out on the side of the metal. So we're going to poke through that also. And just know ahead of time that sometimes these are pretty tight. They're not meant for multiple wires, so you just got to work them in. When it comes to connecting, I like to hook up the ground first on all of my connections. Use a wire nut to do all of this stranded to solid. Make sure you're tight. Now on the surge protector we have our 2 black leads, and in the furnace we have a black and our white. This is our neutral, this is our hot. Since this is designed to hook up to 120, it doesn't matter which one goes where, you just hook them up first. Personally, I like to hook up the neutral first. Now that that's tight, shove that up there, because we need to make sure that the cover can sit. This one fell apart a little bit, so we're just going to use the wire nut to connect these stranded to solid conductors. Come on, nice and tight. There we go. Yeah, these ideal wire nuts are awesome. All right, tuck all that back up so that our cover can work again. We need to... And now when we flip the switch, should have a green light. We are good to go. This unit is now protected. Now everyone is aware that motors and compressors are some of the most expensive repairs in the book. But let me tell you that the control boards that I have been pricing out recently have been very expensive. And control boards are extremely susceptible to overcurrent situations. Just to give you an example, last week there was a house with a big old tree in the backyard that got hit by lightning. The house was also affected by that because of the proximity to where the Ring doorbell cover actually got blown off onto the front porch. The outdoor unit was a Carrier and the control board had a blown piece off the back of the control board. When I called up Carrier, they told me that control board was $700 my cost. Now once you take the cost of the control board and you add in the cost of running a company where you have insurance, vehicle, the actual person going to fix it, the cost adds up, and the customer ended up paying quite a bit for the control board replacement. But if they had one of these protecting their equipment, there would have been no control board replacement. The whole situation would have never happened. They would have only had to get a new Ring doorbell, and this would have cost them like, what, 150, 200 bucks to install? That's no brainer that you should put these on your system just to protect yourself from the very high cost of a control board or a motor or a compressor. So the Intermatic AG3000 is what you're going to want to use on the outside disconnect. Now the first thing you're going to need to do is get your disconnect open. You need full access to it. Pull the power and undo the cover for your electrical. Once you have the device out of the box, you need to figure out where you want to mount it. I don't want to mount it on this side because of the door. If I mount it on the bottom, I can have rain pouring down right here. It is perfectly fine outside, but I would like it right here so that everybody can see it. The homeowner can see the light directly on the side, and everything is easy to read. So we're going to hit this first, the smallest ½ inch knockout on this side. Now unless you turn it off at the breaker, these wires are going to be live. This part is pretty easy. So we have a couple of lock nuts on here with a rubber gasket. I'm just going to take off the first lock nut, leave the rubber gasket on, so that when we slide our wires through and we bring it all the way to the device, the rubber gasket does not allow water to go in. Just drop the lock nut on. Now all you need to do is tighten up the lock nut, but don't forget that one side has rubber, meaning that you're going to have resistance as you tighten it. It's not going to be normal metal on metal where once it's tight, it's locked in. Now we have our 3 wires. Your white wire is going to go to your ground. Your 2 black wires are going to go to the load side of the disconnect. I like to put them on the load side. That side is immediately connected to your equipment, and it allows you to shut the power off to the surge protector if you need it just by pulling the fuses out. Start off with the white. I do like to leave a little bit of slack on the wire, so we're going to cut it right there. Strip that. It's going to be a 10 gauge strip. Hold it in there so it doesn't go anywhere. Start tightening it down. Good little tug test. That one's terminated. So we're going to take both of the blacks. I like to leave a little bit of a loop to work on. If I have a problem with the disconnect and I need to replace the disconnect, then I can replace it without having to replace these because the wires end up too short. Strip both of those, and we're just going to slide these under the lug of our load side, which is our equipment side. Give it a little tug test. Tug test. We are good to go. Pop our cover on. Now we just need to button this whole thing back up. Put our fuses back in. Green light on the side means we are good. The outdoor unit is now protected. So I hope that I helped you out. Both of these products will be linked in the description down below, and I'll see you on the next one.